Today's video is brought to you by eWin Racing, the best source for gaming chairs and desks for those long gaming sessions. We have a playlist of our eWin chair and desk videos linked in the video description below. Save 30% off of everything using the discount code TECHDEALS. More details at the end of the video. We have had 64-bit CPUs now for more than 15 years. And old Brum Hunting comes in with a question.
When we are down to 3nm CPUs, will the next step be 128-bit CPUs?
No. In fact, we may never get 128-bit CPUs. And never is a really dangerous word to use in the technology world. As we currently use them, as we currently manufacture, design, and structure our processors, it is entirely possible we will never build a 128-bit CPU. The interesting thing is we used 4, 8, and 16-bit CPUs for a while. And then in the late 70s and early 80s, 32-bit CPUs slowly came out. And those lasted to the 90s, and then 64-bit CPUs came. And ever since the mid-2000s, 64-bit has been normal for people. And 64-bit will probably last most of humanity for most of the times. There may eventually be specialized, unique CPUs that eventually have to go to more, but that is so unbelievably far into anything we could need. It's just not even funny. There's a couple of reasons why.
Okay, go.
First of all, a 128-bit logic unit within a CPU. First of all, there's memory address space.
Correct.
And then there is the amount of bits per clock cycle that the registers and that the actual integer logic unit within the CPU can process at once.
Correct.
The surface die area necessary to create a 128-bit chip with all of the data paths and with all of the internal registers and the trace lines to move that much data across all the cores and the cache and the memory and everything else that we have would be massive. It's the same reason why we have dual channel RAM on motherboards and quad channels reserved for the HEDTs.
Yes.
Trying to run all those memory traces on the board makes board manufacturing expensive. It's more difficult, the memory timings are harder to maintain. It's a trade-off between absolute performance and cost. Making a true 128-bit processor is possible, but it's sort of like the trade-offs to do it ruin so many other things that it's just not worth the fuss. More cores and faster cores are more useful than 128-bit addressing. And then there's the issue of how much memory can you address? How many different register spaces can you address? 32-bit processors can address 60. Well, let's go back one. 16-bit processors or a 16-bit memory bus can address, I was just about to say 1 megabyte of RAM. That's actually true. Because the 286 could do 16 because it had a 24-bit memory interface. The 32-bit chips, it did. The 32-bit chips like the 386. Now, keep in mind that the 8386 came out in 1985.
Wow.
It could address 4 gigabytes of RAM.
4 gigabytes?
How much RAM do you think 4 gigs in 1985 was? Keep in mind that most computers in 1985 had 64 kilobits.
4 gigabytes? A lot? Like, a lot? All the monies?
That's not a million times more, but it's close. 64 billion bytes versus 4 billion bytes
Yes.
on a 32-bit chip versus a typical computer in 1985 had 64,000 bytes.
Correct.
Billions, then millions was in the middle.
Yeah.
Thousands to billions.
Yes.
But it wasn't that many years before 4 gigabytes wasn't enough. And Windows XP was typically a 32-bit operating system, and it was limited to 4 gigabytes of RAM. Which is why eventually there was a 64-bit version of Windows XP, but it wasn't common and had its issues. It was really Vista that was the first common 64-bit operating system that would let you address more than 4 gigabytes of main system RAM. So if a 32-bit chip is 4 gigabytes, how much RAM can a 64-bit chip address without looking at my screen?
Terabytes?
18 quintillion bytes.
18 quintillion?
It is 2 to the 64th or 1.8 times 10 to the 19th.
That's a big number.
It is ridiculously big. It is so large that it is difficult to find a unit of measurement to compare. Like with 4 gigabytes of RAM, you can talk about how many CDs or DVDs you could fit in there. You can talk about hard drive space. You could talk about movies and book, how many of those you can store.
Yes.
In the address space of a 64-bit chip, you can store everything.
All the cat videos.
All the cat videos. Now, 2 to the 64th
That's big.
is a lot bigger than 2 to the 32nd. A 128-bit memory register could store 2 to the 128th. Sounds like twice as much, right? Well, to those of you who know math, 18 quintillion is impressive. However, 128 is 3.4 times 10 to the 38th. 10 to the 38th is a monstrously larger number than 1.8 times 10 to the 19th. Now, you have been to college. You tell me how much bigger 3.4 times 10 to the 38th is versus 1.8 times 10 to the 19th.
Holy crap, that's like massive.
One's impulse power and the other is maximum warp.
It's like blink and you missed them. 1 to 3?
That is a ridiculously large number.
Yeah, Googleplex of RAM. It's like a couple of Googleplexes, all right?
To put it into perspective, bright screen warning so we don't blow anybody's eyes out here. How would you say that number?
Oh. 1, 2, 3.
This is million, billion,
Yep.
trillion, quadrillion, quintillion, sextillion. What comes after sextillion?
Oct. Oh, 6, 7. Sept.
Septillion, octillion,
What's 9?
entillion,
Nintillion. Nincompoop.
decitillion, or decatillion.
And unknown.
We're beyond stupid
Tillion.
at this point. It is not functionally useful. Here's the kicker. The amount of die space and the amount of energy and the amount of design spent to address numbers this large when you don't have anything that large to work with is a waste of computer. It's a waste of die space. It's a waste of chip. It's a waste of engineering. This number, there's no useful function within our world. It is entirely possible that number is larger than all the grains of sand on Earth. I don't actually know. It's possible.
It's a big number.
That number might be larger than all the grains of dirt on Earth.
Ludicrous quillion.
What would you use it for?
128-bit CPU. Draw-dropping quillion.
There's actually a couple of points down here. 128-bit processors could be used for addressing which would greatly exceed the total data stored on Earth as of 2010, which has been estimated to be 1.2 zettabytes, which is 2 to the 70th.
Oh, we have a big brain in chat.
2 to 128 is such a large number over 2 to the 70th. We will never live that long.
Hippie says a unodecillion.
Oh. How many Tim Tams? It's ridiculous. There's nothing.
Use it for a world conquest.
Now I am dying to hear.
FTL computing, probably.
Okay, fair enough. It is possible we will need that, but we won't be using silicon-based processors at that point. We will have quantum computers.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
We will have We will have computers made out of things that are foreign to our brains. I'm not saying that we will never have 128-bit CPUs. I'm saying we won't have 128 CPUs made out of silicon manufactured on dies using anything remotely identifiable to what we know today. It will basically be magic compared to what we know, because the law of large numbers... by the way, fun fact, this is why anybody who says we'll eventually brute force 256-bit AES encryption failed at math. You might find flaws in the implementation, or you could do the XCD key thing and you could find the guy who has the password, buy a $5 wrench and hit him with it until he tells you the password.
Oh dear.
But you're not going to brute force 256-bit AES. It's not possible.
Okay, it's actually called an undecillion. And Frank says there are only 10 to the power of 82 atoms in the universe.
So I was off by like all the orders of magnitude.
Yeah, you were like...
So 128 bits will address more, which is of course why you can't crack 256. You'll actually reach the heat death of the universe before you'd crack it. You'd never run the key space.
Nope.
It is difficult to those who do not have a math background to appreciate what the law of large numbers mean.
Well, we don't have the technology to do that just yet.
If there's 10 to the 82nd atoms in the entire universe, then 10... What is it's then 10 to the 30...
It's 3.4 by 10 to the 38.
Oh, okay. So you could address all the... I was thinking 2 to the 128th, not 10 to the 38th. Fine. So, okay, you would need a couple of 128-bit computers to address the entire universe.
Well, Denvera says 2 to the 28th is exactly 2 to the 64 times larger than 2 to the 64. Big brain stuff.
Since I mentioned it, I will go ahead and pull it up. 256-bit AES encryption. This.
Oh, this is the number. That's even bigger than the other number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. Only 26. Ooh.
Yes. That it is... Yeah, 256 bits is a common key for cryptographic ciphers and cryptography, such as the American encryption standard, which is called AES, which is not brute forceable unless you hit the guy who knows the password. It's utterly ridiculous.
Do you want to read what Ian said?
Yes.
128-bit is also about power. Fixed instruction length, 128-bit would raise the power of base operations. Variable length decoders get harder to build. Moving data costs power. 32-bit is still popular.
That is an excellent point. I was thinking die area when I was thinking 128 because all the trace lengths eat up your you could just build more 64-bit cores in the space your 128-bit core would take. I didn't think of the power, and that's a good point. It's there are cases, I guess, where a 32-bit CPU... I wonder if they've ever considered making a 48-bit chip, because 32-bit can be limited. 4 gigabytes of memory address is a limitation, but 3.8 times 10 to the 38th is unnecessary for 128. Why did nobody ever build a 48-bit chip?
I guess there's reasons.
We don't really need 64-bit chips, just because it's doubled and it's easier to do engineering-wise. Ian says, note that there is a lot more to 64-bit than just the memory address space limits. You are correct. I wish I was more of a chip expert to be able to explain how the integer logic unit within a chip could handle moving 64 bits of data at a time with each clock cycle. But the more bits you have, the more data has to be synchronized and moved as a group, and the more trace wires you need. I would imagine the complexity of chip design grows exponentially as you add bits. It doesn't seem to me like going above 64 bits using silicon. The question we were originally answering, let's go back to that. Old Braun Humming asked, will 3 nanometers bring 128-bit chips?
Yep.
I am not saying that we will never, ever, ever have 128-bit anything. What I'm saying is it sure as heck won't be at 3 nanometer. Why? What would you use it for? And I don't think it'll ever be built out of silicon. It'll be some futuristic technology. It'll be FTL computers. It'll be quantum computing. It'll be something. Here's the funny thing. For all the advancements in the past 50 years, the first Intel 4004 chips and the original 8008 and even the first 8088 are recognizable to us today. And a modern chip today would be utterly ridiculously futuristic. But if you took a Threadripper and you went back to the original designers of the 4004, if you went back to who were the other two guys? Oh God, I should know this. I suck. Gordon Moore and the other designers of the chip. I suck. And you showed them a Threadripper, they would at least understand the point, even if they were marveled at how in the actual heck did you do this. But they would understand the concept.
Yeah, they would go, whoa.
If you went back to the 70s and started talking about quantum computers, I think they would go,
hello, computer.
Yeah, sure, dude, whatever. Yeah, that's nice. Cuckoo.
Ian has a point. He says almost all microcontrollers in smart meters and stuff are still 32-bit. So a lot of stuff still hasn't made it to 64-bit, let alone 128.
Aren't the first Raspberry Pis 32-bit?
32 or 64?
They're 32, I think. I think they're now starting to move to 64, but... And phones and other tablets were 32-bit for a while. Why do you need... If you don't need 64 bits, why do it?
Because you can?
Yeah, but if you can build simpler, cheaper, more reliable, less expensive, and it does the job, why do you need new?
I don't know.
Do you know what's going to need a lot of processing power?
What?
All these smart cars with all these self-driving features. Mm-hmm. That's going to need like all the computing power.
They are. Grove, Noise, and more.
I'm bad.
Why?
I should have known that. I do know that. I've read that. It's just I don't remember that off the top of my head.
There we go. All right. Well, that's why. Anything else to say?
I find large numbers fascinating, but it's interesting. I actually watched a YouTube video, which I can't think of what the title of it was, but what it did is it attempted to take orders of magnitude, and as it stepped up, as it added a 0 to each, it basically took 1 and then 10 and 100 and 1,000. And as it's going up each order of magnitude, it's giving a reference as to where that fits within our world. Grains of sand in the world, amount of rice eaten in a year, pounds of chickens grown. It attempts to assign something that our monkey brains can associate with
the big number.
Our world with, and as it got to exponentially big numbers, first of all, they stopped going by zeros and they started going by 3 zeros, and then they started going by 6 because there's nothing in between.
Yeah.
And the video commented that beyond a certain point, you start to run out of possible examples, because once you've done all the grains of sand in the world and all the, blades of grass in the world and all the atoms in the universe, what reference do you give humans to explain what a large number references? Seconds the universe has been alive, Planck times, since it starts to get a bit absurd. And numbers, as kids, it would be easy to say, 80 gazillion, bajillion, million, because kids love to make up large numbers.
We do.
I never did that. So.
He did.
But it's so easy to say 1 trillion, trillion, trillion. But that is such an unbelievably larger number than just 1 trillion.
Yes.
A couple days ago on Twitter, there was trending, I know. A couple days ago on Twitter was trending AMC 100,000.
Oh, I do remember that.
Now, AMC recently closed at about $26.50. It was been recently at around $10 or $11 a share. It's nearly triple where it was. It's the Reddit it's the subreddit Wall Street Bets that's kind of drive it up to do a short squeeze against the hedge funds, which isn't important right now. But there were a bunch of people. I mean, it was number 3 trending on Twitter for like half a day. I was just thousands and thousands and thousands of tweets. Hold to 100,000. We're going to take AMC to 100,000 and we're going to destroy these hedge funds. And of course, there were some legitimately serious people there saying this, some of which went through the math. Oh, but you can drive it to stupid numbers because if you can force these billion-dollar hedge funds that they have to cover and they've sold these naked shorts, you can drive the price to stupid. Look what happened to GameStop. It went to like $500 a share, and that company should be $10 a share. That company should be out of business. But putting that aside, you can drive these to stupid, so we're going to drive AMC to 100,000 a share. And I'm like, oh, that's cute. No. We could do it, man. No, you can't. Have you done the math? No, you can't. It's not physically possible. But we can short squeeze them and force it up. You could drive, because if you do a short squeeze, you can drive stocks to stupid numbers. Mm-hmm. But that's not stupid. That's ridiculous.
Yeah,
And the reason it's ridiculous is because at the time I made the point, it was at $17 a share. Now it's at $27 a share. At $17 a share, AMC had a market cap of $7.4 billion. A lot, but it happens, and they're a big movie theater chain, and who knows, they might survive this situation, and movie theaters may come back, and it'll be fine. At 27, it's obviously higher. At $100,000 a share, AMC would be worth $47 trillion, which is more than the entire gross domestic product of the United States and more than 50% of all the stocks. Like the entire stock market, 10,000 plus companies. It would make it not quite 20 times Apple size. That's not possible. The law of large numbers will interrupt it before it gets there. There aren't enough counterparties that would be involved to ever put it to $47 trillion. And there were a lot of people who typed up a bunch of things and who were very convinced we can drive this to 100,000. And I'm like, do you have any idea what it would take to do that? It would, that's not how it, big numbers get in your way.
Yes, they do.
It's why, for example, some cryptocurrencies that are small, like Dogecoin recently, about a month ago, went from 5 cents to 50 cents.
Yep.
In fact, it was at 75 cents briefly, but it's come back down since. It can do that because its base market capitalization was here, and it can go up 10x in 2 days because of the law of small numbers. There's nothing that would make Bitcoin go up 10x in 2 days because Bitcoin is already at $1 trillion.
Exactly.
It can't go to 10 trillion in 2 days. There isn't enough money in cryptocurrency.
To do that, no.
It could eventually go to 10 trillion. I'm not saying it could never get there, but it couldn't go to 100x. It's never going to 100 trillion. Not without like massive inflation and the entire economy growing. That'd be larger than the stock market.
I think that sounds like a good idea.
It's not possible.
Nope.
There isn't another 50 or 10x in Bitcoin left.
Not enough time for that.
It's done. Bitcoin may eventually go to 200 or 300,000 a coin. It's not going to 1 million. There isn't any room in the economy. There's not all the money. It's the law of large numbers. And I think that people don't appreciate that just because something doubled 6 times, it cannot double another 6. Because, okay.
Albert would have something to say about that.
I know. I want to do a reaction to that video. Last example. The chessboard. The famous example of, I would give you a reward. Great. I would love a reward. I would like 1 grain of rice on the first square of a chessboard. There are 64 squares on a chessboard. I would like 1 grain of rice on the first square and just double it to 2 on the second square. And then just double it to 4 on the third square. And I would like that to be my reward. And Albert, who...
all the way to 64.
Yes. And of course, this is a famous story about how the king went, I was going to give you a great reward, and you just want a few grains of rice. Okay, this seems kind of silly, but sure, I grant your request. Albert did the math on this, and it was something like 400 times. If you actually did that and you doubled 64 squares, 1 grain of rice doubled to 2, 2 grains of rice doubled to 4, 4 doubled to 8. It is roughly equal to 400 times the entire worldwide rice harvest on Earth in the year 1990. It is possible, it is greater than all of the rice ever grown by all of humanity in history, because humanity used to be much smaller.
It did.
Only 64. It's a chessboard.
So basically, he got free rice for life.
He got all the rice in human history. That concept, if you don't go through the exercises, our world, where in the world does that level of improvement happen? That doesn't make sense in our normal day-to-day lives.
Nope.
It's ridiculous.
It is.
And I find it utterly fascinating. That gets me excited, if you can't tell. And that's all I have to say about that. eWin Racing has a wide selection of chairs to fit all shapes and sizes of gamers, ranging from petite to cuddly. They have something for every type of gamer. Not just sizes, but colors and material options as well, including red, blue, purple, pink, orange, and more, plus cloth and leather choices. We have over half a dozen chair and desk videos in a playlist down in the video description below. We also have a very special offer just for Tech Deals viewers. Save 30% off of everything using discount code TechDeals using our link in the video description. We have used eWin gaming chairs for 3 years in our office, sitting on them for up to 8-hour marathon live streams. They are very comfortable, and we are happy to work with eWin to bring you this special discount and recommend eWin for all of your gaming chair and desk needs.